Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1683 AN. Today's date is October 7th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Plan Pushed the Mainstream Media into a Corner Regarding the Economy to Blame the Fed. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we know, the plan encompasses a lot more than just putting the deep state into prison. The plan is to take away their entire system, and their entire system is made up of the central bank. I mean, if we think back to the Islamic State and the funding of the Islamic State, to get rid of the Islamic State, you needed to go to the heart of their funding, and that was the oil convoys. And when Russia was introduced into Syria, they found the oil convoys with absolutely no problem. Obama, his administration at the time, said, we can't find this the oil convoy. We don't know where it is. And the funding of the Islamic State is just unbelievable. And Russia was able to find it, and they cut off the funding to the Islamic State. Their revenue dropped, and that's when things started to change. The same thing is going to happen here with the deep state. Those individuals that are not elected, you need to remove their funding. And a lot of people need to wrap their brain around this. It's not just the Federal Reserve. Yes, the Federal Reserve is part of the deep state problem. But think about the ECB and all the non-elected people there that can do all these different things where they can put countries into debt, they can control different countries, and they can control them to the point where they start introducing laws into their countries. And remember, this is all coming from non-elected people. So the plan is not just to go after the fringe. The plan is to go after the deep individuals that are controlling the funding for this entire operation. And the only way to do that is to drive the central bank economy to the point where it completely implodes on itself. And that's what we see happening right now. It's hard to wrap your brain around this because it seems like when you look at the mainstream media and Trump tweeting out that the economy is doing fantastically. But you need to understand what is happening under the covers. I mean, think about it for a second. We have U.S. consumer debt. Now, once the central bank was established, they brainwashed all of us into thinking that debt was a good thing. And if you notice, the mainstream media, what they do is they report on debt. If people are going to debt, like student loans are rising, automobile loans are rising, revolving credit is rising, housing mortgages are rising. This is a good thing because their system is run off of debt. More debt there is, the better the system is. That's what they, brainwashed into thinking. So when we look at consumer debt, we see the Fed reported that in August, consumer credit posted a significant rebound, rising $20 billion above the $15 billion expected, bringing the total to $3.94 trillion. This is a 6.2% annualized increase from a year ago, and it's an all-time high. So what does this mean? This means the people are going further and further into debt. They're using credit to get by today. And when we start to look at auto loans, when we start to look at student loans, we see the same exact thing happening. The debt level is rising and rising very, very quickly. And this is being done on purpose right now because we need debt to go to the maximum amount of debt possible within the government, privately, worldwide. Why? Because the central bank system is designed to only hit a certain amount of debt, and then everything starts to fall apart because you can't support the debt once it reaches a certain point. And that's what we're seeing today. So Trump, while he's manipulating all the statistics, this is being done on purpose to mask what is really going on behind the scenes. You can compare this to North Korea. Trump was out there saying that our nuclear button's bigger, we're going to fire missiles, we're going to destroy North Korea. The mainstream media went along with this. Behind the scenes, there was peace negotiations. They were talking to the North Koreans. They wanted peace. They wanted to come to an understanding. We didn't have war, we had peace. The same thing is happening right now. What we see happening is out in the general public, the economy looks fantastic. They want the mainstream media to report on the economy. And this is being done on purpose. And we're going to be going into that in just a minute of what Trump is trying to do here. He's trying to maneuver the mainstream media into pointing the finger at the Fed. So he's using the same type of strategy, and he wants the mainstream media to be talking about the opposite of what is happening. But when we look at the economy, we know, because we've been following this for quite a while, it is breaking down. And Trump knows this. It's not like he doesn't know this. He knows exactly what's going on with the economy. He knows the stock market is a fake bubble. It's fake and it's in a bubble. He knows the real estate market is in a bubble. He knows that we have way too much debt. He knows that this cannot be supported. And when we look at the real estate market, which we've been looking at very closely because this affects a lot of different economic sectors, we see that in the Denver region, well, sales there, home sales there, have collapsed in September, forcing sellers to heavily discount asking prices. We're not just seeing this in Denver, we're starting to see this in many different cities. Remember, Bank of America came out last month and they rang the bell on the U.S. real estate market saying that it hit the peak right now, which we have. We're starting to see homes, and if you start to look around, you can see people are lowering their prices, and they're continually lowering their prices because the housing prices are starting to fall. The market's starting to fall apart. The Fed is raising rates. This affects a lot, and we especially see it in the housing market. Remember, the debt level in the U.S. is very, very high. The U.S. gross national debt jumped by $84 billion in September. And what this means is the debt record is at an all-time high of $21.52 trillion. And when we start to put this into perspective, we need to understand that there's interest attached to this debt. Now, the reason for the soaring debt is, of course, the runaway U.S. budget deficit. And the CBO revised its forecast and now expects that the deficit will approach $1 trillion by the end of the fiscal year, or 1 year sooner than disclosed in the CBO's most recent forecast. In April, the agency didn't expect the deficit to reach $1 trillion until 2020. And now they're saying, yeah, it's going to hit it much sooner. When we look at this, we can see that the amount of interest that has to be paid on the U.S. federal debt, and this is the 2018 amount, is just over $523 billion. It's $500 billion a year. It's catching up to the whole budget of the Department of Defense. And we see that this will not be able to be sustained, especially with people getting lower paying jobs, part-time jobs. It's completely impossible. Remember, the full-time jobs, the manufacturing jobs have been moved overseas. Yes, Trump is trying to get them back, but it's not for this economy. It's to set us up for the transition. And remember, this is going to be a transition out of the central bank economy, out of the Fed economy. And we need to understand is that the mainstream media, they always report in favor of the Fed, of the central banks. Remember, because they're in line. The deep state, the mainstream media, they're in line with the central banking system. And they never really want to report anything against the central bank system. So in a lot of their reporting, they're reporting on how the central bank, the Fed, has allowed the economy to grow, how great the economy is doing because of the Federal Reserve policies. It has nothing to do with Trump. It all has to do with the Federal Reserve. Now remember, Powell is working with Trump. They're raising the interest rates, and we know what happens when the interest rates move up. The economy starts to fall apart. Now, as the mainstream media is reporting that the Fed is great, that they improve the economy, their policies are working, the economy is going to be breaking down behind the scenes. Remember, the plan is to blame the Fed. Now, the mainstream media is supporting the Fed on how they're making the economy great, how their policies are working. They keep reporting on how the Fed is saying the economy is strong. In the meantime, Trump is saying the economy is strong. And he's getting ready to overtake the narrative and to blame this on the Fed. And remember, the mainstream media is supporting the Fed. And every time Trump comes out there saying, maybe we shouldn't be raising the interest rates because, we have a lot of debt coming up soon. He thought Powell was going to be an easy money Fed. He didn't know he was going to be an interest rate Fed. And we know from past history, as the Fed raises interest rates, the economy breaks down. Trump has been saying that the globalist system is dead. We hear the IMF out there complaining about what the Fed is doing now with raising interest rates, and the mainstream media is backing all of this up. It's to bring the mainstream media, the Fed, all down at the same time. I mean, think about it right now. The IMF is out there, and they're saying what the Fed is doing with raising interest rates, it's not a good thing, while the rest of the world is at very low or negative interest rates. It's not helping the global economy. And if they continue with this, it's going to destroy the economy. So we already have the IMF saying this. The mainstream media, they're continually backing the Fed while the economy's breaking apart. And Trump, he's going to continually dig at the Fed. He's going to contradict the Fed as time goes on about the interest rates, explaining to America why interest rates aren't good, why we shouldn't be raising them at this time, how it's going to destroy the economy. We have too much debt. This is going to be the plan moving forward, and he's already started this, and this is going to continue to take down the entire central bank, deep state, global economic system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.